work. Right? I always forget that too. I actually have a sticker note on my computer that says record stupid to remind myself. Chaos, exactly, right? It's that chaos part. Right? But it's important to handle chaos, right? Because if we don't allow that, then we're going to be stagnant. Right? We're going to be too much control. Right? And there's this interesting intersect. It's called chaotic. Actually, the founder of Visa created that term in the 90s. He said there's this intersect between chaos and order. And this is where emergence happens, innovation happens, and creativity happens, right? In that intersect. And I think it's also the path of the leader between chaos and order. Sorry, did you want this? As I said, I'm going to share all the slides with you anyway, so you'll get a digital copy of all of them. Happy to do so. But I think that in this part here is where leadership happens, right? It's the path of the leader, and it's also this part of learning. What if I learn something new, if I have new information, it's first of all stressful. And I have to, instead of being externally directed, I have to come back into my center, I have to come back into ownership. And then I have to decide who I want to be and what I'm going to create. Right? And if you think about the word leader, leadership actually comes from Greek, and it means going before as a guide. Right? Being willing to step outside the existing circle, outside the existing cultural operating system, being willing to try something new. And then, of course, still delivering results. Right? You still have to ship. In my company, we like to say, I put the ship in leadership this week. Right? I shipped something. I created a result. So we have to have that balance of both these things. And there's a bit of that surrendering to chaos and letting go and being okay with that. Right? And this is something that we can also learn a bit more from nature and from more natural. And we just talked a little bit about indigenous cultures. They are much better at allowing things. Right? And then there's this part of order, of putting order into things. And also important if we want to create results. In between is that flow state. You might have heard about that notion of flow. It happens in exactly that intersection between letting go and still having discipline. That's where things emergence again happens. In my company, we like to say that leadership is a process of expanding the capacity to create in self and others. And it starts with leading yourself. And it's not about telling someone else what to do. It's about encouraging them and helping them create more so that they can do it for someone else. Right? Leaders create leaders who create leaders. So that ultimately we create leader-full environments. People talk a lot about leader-less organizations. I think that doesn't work. Then there's chaos. Right? We need leader-full organizations where many people are leading. Right? And leading has nothing to do with your position or your title. It has to do with the fact that you're constantly engaging in this process of expanding your awareness, right? Looking at more things, growing your perception, then taking responsibility for the things that are yours to take responsibility for, because not everything is your responsibility. Right? So also making that distinction and figuring out what's mine to take care of, so that ultimately you can be in ownership and be centered here, right? Self-directed. Right? There's a word, actually a beautiful word, authentic. In Greek, comes from Greek autohentos, which means self-offering, self-doing. Not externally directed, not because culture says so, or your boss says so, or the company says so, or anybody else tells you what to do, because you're doing it because it's right for you. You're in ownership of your life. This is your life. You know? If it's news to you, I'm sorry, but you will die eventually. Right? In all likelihood, with all the life extension, all the work we're doing, in all likelihood, we'll still die. And then you can look back and say, this was my life. All these moments. Right now, right now, right now, right now. Right? And the older you get, the more precious these moments become. I'm already have lived more moments than I will live. So every single moment now is becoming more precious even. Right? Which is why old people don't tolerate fools. So I'm glad you're still here. But like why old people don't tolerate fools, because it's very precious moments. And then I can choose who I want to be, what my identity should be in every moment. How do I want to show up in this world? Because that determines my actions and ultimately the outcomes I create. We're talking a lot about leadership for now, and I haven't mentioned AI even yet, because it's about, last week we had the last time the talk was on AI specifically, the technology of it. Today I want to really focus on what it means for us in these times of transformation, because everything is transforming. Well, we looked at the different spheres of concern earlier, but our planet is transforming, our ecosystems are transforming, our international supply chains are transforming, political systems are transforming, our organizations are transforming, especially because of AI. Because AI has not just given us and enabled completely new ways of organizing ourselves, but also necessitated new ways of organizing ourselves. Right? And how we work in our teams has changed because of it, and how we work in our relationships has worked with it. Right? And even with technology itself, when I was a kid, online dating was weird, didn't even exist. Right? When it first came about, it was weird, and now it's 70–80% of people meet each other online. Here in Japan, actually, somebody just married his avatar, like his little electronic Roku, I think she's called. Right? They actually married her because she says it's a perfect girlfriend. She never contradicts me. She says, hi, I can't wait for you to come home from work. And there's some very strange, dangerous things happening with AI here right now, because we already lost against social media. Right? We already have kids who are addicted to screens. Right? We already lost that game. Now add relational intelligence to it. I don't know how many people here use ChatGPT, the app. Like on the computer, you talk to it. Like the whole like, hey, you like talk to ChatGPT. Do you? It's scary. She sounds like the woman from Her, right? I mean, obviously the guy liked the movie Her, right? But it's so relational. It already feels like someone's actually talking with you. It's not just typing a prompt and doing a good prompt. It's actually chatting with you, right? So that's also happening. And as a result, the individual is changing. We have to change as who we are now. Right? And it's something new. The good news is doing something new isn't new. It's always been around. Transformation has been around for a long time, and there's a lot of ancient wisdom that we can benefit from in these times of change. This lovely gentleman, Henry Adams, says that chaos was the law of nature, order was the dream of man. Right? So there's always chaos, and we're trying to put order into it somehow. Right? And there's these parts of culture and strategy. I call it squaring the circle. This is where we do leadership in this intersect, right? Between culture and strategy. Strategy really oftentimes more about management, and I think these things get confused as well. Right? Management is about delivering results, divvying up work, separating work so that stuff gets done. Leadership is about enabling people to get work done. Right? And we have maps, right? But they're not the territory. Right? We have lots of good maps, like even our P&L is a map, right, of what should happen and what we would track. But if you just focus on financial metrics, you actually erode the quality of your product or service. Right? So that's not sufficient anymore. We just talked about that, how we have created this toxic culture where we're just looking at financial results all the time. And that's actually killing the products and services that we're creating in the first place. We're killing ourselves. Right? And if we now put AI on that, we're just super driving this. Right? And so we need this culture and strategy. We need this mixture of the two things. And as a transformational leader, I think there's 3 jobs right now in the context of AI. The first is to up-level the workforce, to actually change who we are as human beings. And I'll get back into that in a moment. The second is to innovate and implement new ways of organizing ourselves. Right? I mean, I've saved myself about 30% of my time last year just using AI. I even have an AI that's my cooking coach, where I can say, hey, I have these 3 things in the fridge, what can I make? And it tells me the things I can make. I have a ukulele teacher, I have a Japanese sensei, she's teaching me some Japanese for the stuff that Duolingo can not tell me. I have a workshop designer, and I gave it all my transformational workshop stuff, my somatic experiencing stuff, my polyvagal exercise stuff. And I just say, hey, I need a 90-minute workshop in my typical style of connect, scan, focus, act, give me an agenda. And it just gives you an agenda. All right. Or even this talk, like the description for this talk. And Christian said, hey, do you want to do a talk on transformational leadership? I said, great. Give me a description for transformational leadership talk and some of the key highlights and takeaways. Done. I have to edit it, of course, right? Make sure it's all right. But I spent 5 minutes on it instead of 50. So we have new ways of organizing ourselves that are available now that we need to innovate, actually, because we don't know how to do this yet. Right? So you get to come up with completely new ways of doing this, too. And to really craft a new culture consciously. William Adams says, I will act as if what I do will make a difference. It's kind of insane to think you can change the world. And for many years, I've told leaders, don't even worry about trying to change your company. Just create a little island of sanity for your team, at least. Right? Make it okay in that realm, wherever you are. And I think we're beyond that now. Right? Because if I look at our climate situation, this is overshoot day. Right? Some of you might have heard about it. We're using up the majority of our resources before the half of the year is even over. Right? And I think at this point, I consider myself a realist, which means I can be a pessimist and an optimist. And I choose to be an optimist, because otherwise it's really no fun if you think it's all going to go down and you're going to burn in hell. right? But I think we have about a 50-50 chance for humanity by 2050 at this point. Right? In the south of Germany, they're starting to plant citrus plants, which used to grow in the Mediterranean, because they know it's going to be a very different climate. When I was a kid, there was no 40-degree weather, ever. 35 degrees was like max. And there was snow on Christmas. There's no more snow on Christmas, and we have 40-degree weather in Germany now. And here, I'm not sure what Tokyo was like back in the day, but I'm sure it wasn't quite as hot either. And we just had 50 degrees in Dubai this year already. We already had 50 degrees in India, where literally birds were falling out of the sky, suffocating. That's happening. Mm-hmm. I have a little nephew, Hector. Oh, getting emotional. I would like him for him to be 50 years old one day. Okay. So we have work to do. Right? And this is part of a progression of, I'm not going to go too deep into this, but if you look at how we do anything, there's that repeating system of how we do anything is how we do everything. Right? First we model through, we do something for the first time, then we do it again and again, then we optimize how we do it, then we get really good at integrating all the different systems, and ultimately we expand from there. Right? And this goes a little bit to different societies, right? From hunter-gatherer to the great agricultural cults to industrialization to this age of optimization that's been happening the last 40 years or 50 years. We've been optimizing how we do business. Now it's time for something new. It's time for experiments and to do new things, because everything is in transformation right now. So we get to also figure out, hey, what can we do that's new? All right, we have an opportunity right now to do some new things and to create more integrative solutions. Right? Ultimately create something more meaningful. And so getting to AI, we have this whole digital workforce. And AI, a lot of people think it's large language models like ChatGPT, but AI is so much bigger. Right? This is just a small part here where you have generative AI and deep learning intersecting. That's large language models. But we have AI that can go into all kinds of areas, right? Starting with robotics, for example. And a bricklaying robot can already lay bricks much, much faster than any human can. About 1,000 bricks per minute, per hour, so. Super fast, and robots are going to come very quickly. There's already, Japan is one of the leading countries coming back to being a global leader and the opportunity for being a global leader. But there's also even robots they're trying to create with the whole idea of Industry 6.0 for taking care of the elderly, because about 42% of millennials are virgins. And the human relationships aren't working anymore, and there's nobody coming up to actually take care of the old people. So they're talking about building robots for it. Maybe not the best kind of robot, right? But technology can already do what we could do on a physical level. Right? And you would think emotionally we're superior? Nah, not really. Right? An AI can much more quickly, from a facial expression, micro expressions, and from the tone of voice, discover how someone's feeling and discover depression, for example. Right? And even ChatGPT has just surpassed 100% of psychologists in a recent study on social intelligence. And soon, we'll have augmented reality, right? We'll have contact lenses. There are already multiple companies that have patents for it, right? Or even those kind of level glasses, where you have these kind of level glasses, and I can look at you and not just see your LinkedIn profile next to you, but I can see, is he happy right now, bored right now, half interested, angry, right? I can see all that. That's going to change my leadership, right? If I can look at my employee and be like, oh, they're really checked out right now, and they're really hating what I'm saying, right? Or they're really bored right now. So you have that level of intelligence also already available pretty much right now. And then there's a typical, IQ measurements. We've been thinking, we're thinking rational beings, and AI can, this is empathy still, right? This is where it's actually better than most doctors doing in a recent empathy study, right? And then there's the typical intelligence stuff, AI, IQ stuff, where it's already surpassing most humans, right? But again, there's nobody home. I think that's important to remember. It's just giving you predictive modeling. It's just giving you what should be the next word based on all the words I've read. There's nobody home, right? And so there's a bit of a hype right now, but there's already, if you look at the hype curve, there's already AI that's actually working on the plateau of productivity, right? We just had this hype with ChatGPT in the last couple of years, but there's a lot of AI, even a beautiful AI that's translating for us right now. Right, thank you so much for doing that. I hope that's working. Is it working, sort of, with Japanese subtitles, kind of? Yeah. Okay, all right. But interesting one, of course, younger generation is using it a lot more. Also interesting, the distribution, you would not be surprised, as I said, between men and women, but more and more women are using AI. And there's something that actually people don't talk about around AI, and that's the equalization of chances. Right? I'm a pretty decent writer. I can write a pretty decent blog. Now anybody in the world can write a pretty decent blog. Right? And that's suddenly possible. That wasn't possible a few years ago. But someone in the Philippines or someone in Africa can write a pretty decent blog in English suddenly too. Possible now. Right? And working in the United Nations, here's a sudden integration that's happening across different nations even. Suddenly there's we've used to have geo arbitrage, right? Where by now it was cheaper to produce, clothing in Bangladesh or clothing in somewhere else in the world than it is in Germany. Right? But that's going away too. Because someone in, India with an MBA, why should they make less money than someone in Germany with the same education? And now tools that allow them to come up and show up on the same level. Right? I've been talking to my friend Yuko's parents and family when we've been using Translate. Right? And they're just, the older generation here in Japan is amazingly adept at using this. Right? They were constantly going, blah, 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 blah. When I spoke in ego, and it came in English and the other way around. Right? Pretty impressive. That's already happening. But of course, there's reason to be afraid, right? Of course, also, right? And in the world, the Chinese actually are most optimistic. 78% think it will make our life better. In Japan, it's about 42% only. The Germans are a little bit less confident, with 37% thinking that it will kill us eventually. Right? And crime is up, right? If you think about it, you can take somebody's voice, take a 3-second voice model, and actually have them call your parents and be like, "Mommy, I'm stuck in Thailand right now. I want to send some money," right? With your voice. So that kind of crime. There's a whole nother, this is just one example, right? There's tons of new crime that's possible now with AI too. The good news is only about 30% of AI professionals think that AI will kill us. 30%. Yay. And they know what they're talking about. That's the scary part, right? We're all like, amateurs, but these, professionals. Do you think AI will kill us? All right, cool. Thank you. All right, there's hope. There's hope then. Okay, good. But it blows my mind, right? And this, of course, I made with, mid-journey, right? It took about 10 minutes. These are all the different drafts, right? 10 minutes of drafts. Any one of these would have taken an artist hours and hours and hours to make only a couple of years ago, even with digital technology like Photoshop, right? Freaks me out. Right? And then, of course, gonna do it. So yeah, freaks me out. And of course, I had to take my own headshot and see what it looks like if I'm freaking out with AI blowing my mind. Is this AI blowing my mind? And as Terence McKenna said in an interview back in the 90s, it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder. And finally, it's going to be so weird that people have to actually talk about how weird it is. Right? And people are going to say, what the hell is going on? It's just too nuts. And the systems which are in place to keep the world sane are utterly inadequate for the forces that have been unleashed. When you work in the UN, you know that right now it's still national interest. And we have planetary problems. There's an incongruence there. Right? And our companies that are focused on financial results, they're not interested in making a future happen for our children. Right? So the systems that are there, even our legal systems, right, they're built based on the great pirates from the Dutch era from 500 years ago. Right? That's why every courtroom in the world looks like a ship, a railing that you cross over, right, for some other captain to negotiate your commerce transaction. If you actually kill someone, it's a commercial transaction. Right? Not adequate for our times. And anybody want to guess what the prompts were for these images? Transformation is a death experience. Because transformation is something that actually means it going beyond the current form. Right? When a cube transforms, it's not a cube anymore. Right? And it's different from change, because change happens all the time. Right? A to B to C to D, right? It's continuous, it's the same old plus. Like I've already changed and shedded a whole bunch of skin cells since this morning. Right? Every one of us has changed already since this morning. Right? That's different from a transformation, because a transformation, something ceases to exist as what it was, and be something completely new at the end of it. And in between is this complete freak out of uncertainty, right? And it's this liminal space in between. And that's where we're at right now, in this liminal space between what was and what will be. And what was is already not serving us anymore. the organizational structures, the way of being. And what will be isn't yet. Right? And there's those people who want to go back, right? Make America great again. And this, usually when there's crisis, there's always some groups that, imagine a glorified past of how it was great back then, and it never actually existed. Right? Then there's a confused middle, just waiting to see what's going to happen next. And then there's those few freaks who say, let's do this, let's build the future, right? Let's actively build the future. We're meant to be architects of the future, not its victims, as Buckminster Fuller said, right? And that requires us to go transrational. What do I mean by that? Right? I think, therefore I am. You might have heard Descartes' quote. Right? This is how we think we're human beings. We're rational human beings. That's what makes us different from plants or animals. Right? But if the AI is thinking, then who am I now? Right? If I look at the human operating system, there is different levels of who I am. I seem to have a body, right here, that has the same intelligence level as a plant. Right? They have a body too. They have cellular intelligence. Right? And if you actually look, there's a bunch of experiments around plants, listening to classical music, for example, or being influenced when you talk to them in different ways. There's a difference there, right? There's an intelligence on that physical level. Then there's a emotional intelligence. We like things, we don't like things, we feel pulled towards things, we kind of like some things don't feel so good. Right? We have an emotional intelligence. And then we have this rational intelligence, the mind. Right? This is sort of where AI lives. Right? This rational intelligence, the mental level. But we have these other intelligences too. Right? We have a relational intelligence in terms of how I'm connecting to other people. Once I say I, everybody else is other. Right? And I have a voice, a unique expression, not just the voice I'm talking with, but the unique expression that we have here, right? 8 billion flowers in the world, 8 billion unique individuals. When people talk about diversity, I think it's not going far enough. We have 8 billion people to integrate here, right? Each of us is unique. Each of us is beautiful in their own way. Each of us has something specific to bring to this world too. And we all have the capacity for vision. Right? We evolved to worry about things. Right? Oh, yesterday there was a saber-toothed tiger there. There might be there tomorrow. Right? So it's very easy to worry and to imagine bad things. Very, very easy. And the word worry actually comes from German würgen, which means to choke. Because when I'm worrying, I'm not making good decisions. Blood is not going here. And then we have that calling, that sense of meaning here. Right, that we all have in little dreams or synchronicities, or the sense that we are meant to create something with our lives, make it meaningful. The meaning comes from German meinen, which means to make mine, right, to make my life my own, not somebody else's. And AI, there's a part of pre-rational, right, body and emotions. When people talk about going back to the great mother, that's also a little bit of that, fantasy of going back. And it's not about going back. It's not about becoming irrational. It's about becoming stepping up, and this is the part as leaders now that you get to do with your workforce, is bringing into relational intelligence. Right? Relational intelligence means I understand that there's these different core relationships in life, right? That I have with myself, my relationship to my body, my emotions, my mind, but also the relationship to that other higher thing, these higher capacities, to my genius. We actually need to make some time now to make time for our genius, to journal, to paint, to sing, to dance, whatever it is for you that creates time for you to take yourself seriously and to think about who could I become? What wants to come from me? What wants to emerge from me? Right? And to make time for that is really important. And then there's the other, right? Res alles in Latin, reality. There's all the things that are not I. Right? And the more distinctions I learn, the more words I learn, the more refined of a reality I can experience. And I can also see the divine spark in everything around me. I can look at everybody around me and be like, wow, I see God through your eyes. Right? And in Indian, they say, namaste, I create the divine light in you. Right? I see you in your eyes. There's also the consciousness that's behind my eyes. We're not that different. We're all part of Team Humanity. We're all 3.5 billion years old. We're all life. Right? And this requires not just horizontal development, but vertical development. And this comes with AI. On the one hand, we need to learn some technical skills. Of course, we need to go learn some new stuff. And that's what YouTube is for. You can learn anything you want to today, for free even. Right? Some of the best universities in the world, we talked about Harvard and stuff like that. Right? Some of the best universities in the world have free online courses you can take. So there's learning in that level, it's horizontal learning. And then there's vertical development. And that's shifting into higher levels of how we process reality. This is where their job as a leader now, in the age of AI that is rational and beating us at the rational game, we now need to, because they don't have a relational self. ChatGPT, there's nobody home. Can't forget that. There's no I behind it, even if it sounds like that. It deceptively sounds like that. So we need to make sure people are actually learning how to be authentic, how to be self-directed in ownership of their life and not externally directed. That's vertical development. And in the end, there's only one corner where we can actually do something, and that's our own self. We can improve ourselves as a starting point. And learn from each other, learn from the ancients, learn from the future, learn, and keep on growing. And this is where it's important to become transpersonal too, right? Where I go beyond my current identity and I activate these higher levels. Where it doesn't matter what body I'm in, whether I'm masculine, feminine, man, woman, German-born, Japanese, doesn't matter. Right? Where I go beyond feeling good or bad and what I like right now or don't like right now. And I suspend that every now and then. Right? That I go beyond my mental system and my belief systems and remember that all belief systems are BS. Right? Every belief system is bullshit. It's just beliefs. Nobody knows truth. Right? Even this, if I let this go, it will very likely fall down with 9.81 meters per second. Very, very likely. But do I know that? No. Right? A good scientist would never say, I know this. A good scientist would say, yes, it's very, very likely. Very, very likely from all we've observed so far. But nobody knows. So let's stop pretending that we know, right? And go beyond our relationships in a way, right? To go transpersonal, to really think about who could I become, right? Not just who am I, right? But don't get stuck in identity. And unfortunately, we tried to play this earlier and it didn't work quite right, but here's a beautiful video. When you get the slides, there's a link by Trasnformational talking about the trap of identity. And that is so terrible that we identify ourselves. But it actually makes sense because on the rational level, that mental level, the level of words or semantic circuit, there's Philip, right? And Philip, you seem to think it's a noun, right? It's a name, right? It's a noun, but it's not true. I'm a verb. I seem to be a verb. I'm changing all the time, right? And we have to get beyond that noun thinking. Because when we have a noun thinking, we trap people. We say, you're a woman, you're a man, you're a German, you are Japanese. Right? Those are traps of identity. We're fluid, we're always evolving. And each of us has a chance to continue to evolve. Right? And so think about who you could become in this age of AI, right? With all this power available in your pocket. For 20 bucks, you get ChatGPT talking to you all day long, teaching you things. And what are you using it for? Right? You can use AI to be more distracted, right? Or you can use it to learn every day, to grow every day, to create something here, right? And really think about what you want to create. What can you create in this world here? Because it's time. And if you're here and you're hearing this, then this is also your calling, right? I get to be universe's voice reminding you that you can here to create something, to really leave something behind that's powerful. In Native American tradition, they say you die 3 times. The first time when your body dies, the second time when all the people that you knew died, and the third time when nobody speaks your name anymore. So you could be, you could actually be immortal if you wanted to, right? So go create something that makes you immortal. And, I'm not going to go too deep into this in terms of how you create culture, but you'll have it in the slides. It's a model we use around creating new archetypes, telling new, principles that are attached to those, telling the stories of those, creating new language. Right? And as leaders, you can do this in your company. Right? You can create the new archetypes. Like, for example, I've been working with Siemens, and for the last few years, we've been creating this idea of an entrepreneur, right? The intrapreneur, not the entrepreneur, but the person inside of the organization. And we've been defining them about principles, and we've been telling their stories. And now suddenly people are like, oh yeah, we want to be entrepreneurs. Right? And this is how you get over the edge of the abyss of early adoption, right? Because you have your innovators who are already doing it anyway. When you have your early adopters, and the best thing you can do is teach them how to teach the early majority, because then they're going to bridge the gap for you. And in the end, we're all invited to create the future, starting with ourselves, our own future. That starts with self-care. Right? If you want to be a leader in a transformational time, make time for yourself. If you burn out, you're not going to help anybody. Right? You know, in the airplane, they say, put your own oxygen mask on first. They do that for a reason. Right? So take care of yourself, spend time with self-care. Then think about and learn how to adopt new good habits and regulate yourself towards who you want to become. And ultimately practice self-cultivation. Right? Always have a vision of who you want to become that you're working towards. And be kind to yourself, right? Being an individual is difficult. And everybody else wants you to be like everybody else. Because if you're like them, then they feel okay about themselves. This is that trap that we go where we keep each other hostage in these existing systems. Right? Because everybody optimizes their P&L every year. Of course they do. And it's not about not doing this anymore. But it's not sufficient. Right? When you think about the word profit, profit comes from Latin pro esse, which means may it be beneficial. And if it's just financial results, it's a small profit. Very small profit. Not enough for today's day and age. So be kind to yourself and to each other and create the future. And thank you. And remember, we're not alone. You go to lumen.io 2024 Tokyo AI. You can download these slides. This, I think, sends you to my website. So you're welcome to, because I did forget my business cards because they're in my computer bag. And since my computer died and I didn't bring it, they're with my computer, my dead computer in my computer bag. So please get in touch that way if you feel like it. And thank you so much for your attention and your moments. And,
we have time for questions.
how are we doing on the food? Because you know you've been preparing it, and I want to be respectful to our chef. You doing okay?
Fine.
You're fine? Okay, cool. And we can also obviously continue to talk over dinner, but any questions, please, or thoughts? Yeah.
Thank you. It's very well, I listen to you. Very nice. I'm thinking about that. One place. Change the life. That one by 2 legs. But after eating I'm thinking what we need. Transform your life. Transform the world. Change the world. Change the change the life. Change the right. Change the world. The concept is 2020. Right? Think about transform. Transform. Not like it. That's what I'm thinking. I need to do.
So I'm here. So I understand is like when you transform yourself, you transform the world.
Yeah.
Right? And not just.
My generation is so-called 68. 1968. The 1968. We are told always change the life, change the world, change the world. But right now, we have to transform your life. We have to transform the world. How do you think about that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it seems that if you look at life, it seems to transform in waves, right? There's always this new stuff coming up, and underneath it is always a backdraft too.
Yeah.
If you think about the 60s, in many centuries, actually, there's a saying that history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. Right? And if you think about the 60s, 70s, in many centuries, there were some new ideas coming out, some new thoughts coming out, right? And they thought, oh, we can change the world. And then it seems to have gone backwards, right? But if you think about like a lot of what I'm referring back to, a lot of my teachers came from the 60s. Whether it's Timothy Leary, Ram Dass, those kind of guys, right? There's a lot of people from the 60s and 70s that were actually kind of forgotten for a moment in the wave of history, but they're coming back up. Well, the same thing if you think about like 1920s Berlin. In 1920s Berlin, a lot of the same topics were already happening that we're talking about today. Everything from gender issues to personal liberty, to changing the planet, to vegetarianism, to all these things were already there too, right? And today, more people are actually talking about this than ever before. But if you actually look at the statistics, more people